day 4. The plan for me, at least, is after morning training to come back here, get freshened up, and head straight for the Ho Chi Minh City Post Office, which I think is in District 1. It's like a shopping area, and we also have this historic 19th century, like, I guess maybe Catholic church over there. So I want to see that. Anywhere between 6 to 8 more shots left on my black belt. And then that'll be done. So, gotta be very selective. I've never been a particularly acrobatic person, but one skill that I've always kind of wanted to develop is handstanding. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what Ashley had in mind for us on this particular morning. And after all this prep, the real competition was about to start. Each of us was going to walk ourselves up into handstand position and hold it for as long as we could. My main objective with this was just not being first to slide off the wall, so I held in strong for second. God. Hang on. Oh. They're both shaking. Of course it's these two. 7, 8. The childhood friends. You know. 2 minutes. Once the handstand revelry had subsided, we got to work drilling, but these videos run long enough as is, so I'll just get to the part you all really want to see. Me getting punched in the face.
Hey, we'll wait. Still on power.
Eric caught me really clean there. My hands were too low, and I had run out of space to evade behind me, so I was essentially against the ropes. On the recording, you can hear Brandon give him a warning about his power, which is appreciated, but at the same time, I should have been looking out for myself. Now, of course, naturally, some testosterone starts bubbling up, and I wanted to get my lick back, but Fighters who let their ego override their training often wind up unnecessarily changing their strategy and then getting hurt. So I kept doing me. What had changed is that Eric earned my attention with that strike. At the same time, it showed me that he was falling into a bit of a beginner's trap, which is when you make every strike or kick almost as hard as it can be. This is an incredibly difficult rate to maintain, and eventually, it will wear you out. Notice how Eric's breathing is getting heavier. I'm able to walk him down. His attacks are less committed, and then he does this. As soon as I saw that, I pounced forward to remind him that the fight's not over until the bell rings. In a competitive match, that might have been a pounce plus a right overhand with some NyQuil in it. But Eric got the message and was able to lock back in for the last few seconds, giving it all he could until he was completely exhausted. Energetically, my next match would be almost on the opposite end of the spectrum. Jeff has an extensive history of striking. He started off with a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo when he was younger, then switched to Kempo where he achieved a fifth-degree black belt, and that's currently what he instructs in alongside some Jeet Kune Do at his dojo in Colorado. Pretty immediately, I noticed and commented on Jeff's control, particularly when throwing potentially fight-ending techniques like that hook kick you saw him throw a few seconds ago. He attributed this to the fact that he works with a lot of youth and children at his dojo, so he can afford to go all out, which I can relate to since there are a lot of young people at my gym as well. But frankly, I think regardless of age, people should incorporate this kind of sparring more often. Jeff and I have similar builds, but our strategies are a bit different. He's much better, I think, at swarming, blitzing in with attacks of his own and leaving me little room to counter. He also uses a really dope forearm block here, sliding off of my attack and reasserting his own. I occasionally had success tagging him in the abdomen, but I think if I were scoring the round, I'd definitely give it to Jeff. He was more active, and his lead limb was especially efficient, as you can see with that perfectly placed side kick. With ill intent, that probably would have been a broken rib or two. The day before this, Aldo and I had gotten a really great round in, and I swore I was recording, but as fate would have it, I didn't. So I was determined that this time, we'd get our footage. Because of how the previous round had gone, and because of how much time we'd been spending together outside the gym, Aldo and I had an unspoken agreement that we would pick up the pace in this match. We'd established enough trust to be able to push each other without necessarily hurting each other, which is a very delicate balance to reach.
Yes! You got a pressure ball.
I love that moment. Not only did our simultaneous punch exchange look cool, it unlocked a bit of a flow state between us. To this point, Aldo had been throwing some excellent combinations, but I was always just out of reach, and I was continuing to snipe him with long ones and twos, just out of his counter range. Like this one I sneak in as I'm gliding backwards. I'm definitely matadoring a bit here, causing Aldo to really lunge and try to reach my head. I guess it's ironic that I'm wearing red too. But something shifts as Aldo starts to incorporate Edward's advice.
Yes! Yes!
The tables begin to turn. Aldo starts to find his range and find opportune moments to interrupt my evasive movement, as well as capitalizing on my slips like he does here. Starting to feel the pressure, I recognize I need to flash something serious to show Aldo I'm still dangerous. So I blitz forward with a back fist and cross that he respects enough to give me some room. At Edward's call, Aldo shoots out a darting cross and almost clips me with the double-step low kick we've been working the past couple days. I return with a dart of my own and create one of my favorite sequences from the week. Darting forward in that triangular pattern like I did with Ronald, I throw a rear straight to Aldo and dip the return punch that I know is coming. Then, I use my body to push him off balance so that his counter hook can't touch me. And thank God it couldn't, because that would have put me on my behind. There are more rounds to come in this series, however I decide to share them with y'all. But I have to say this is probably the best time I had on the mat. And I gladly would have gone another 3 minutes if we had the time.
Yes. Yeah. All the way.
Ready? Time.
Yo, beautiful, man.
No, it was better than yesterday.
Little treat after some phenomenal training this morning. Yep, the CTE setting in. Don't worry about it. I must have gotten in like 6 rounds of sparring, maybe 7. They were all really great. So now it's back to the hotel for a shower and then tourist time. Please stop. Please no.
There was a brief moment where I wasn't sure it would be tourist time because of the rain. But luckily it stopped, and after a quick breakfast bite and a stare down with these uncanny mannequins, I hopped in a grab car with Aldo and Ronald toward District 1. Our hotel was in District 7, which was a bit more of the remote end of Saigon. District 1 had more of the commercial appeal. There was a greater variety of shops like this cafe, clothing outlets, and generally it was a younger population. This is like their downtown. After a bit of a wraparound, we arrived at the historic Ho Chi Minh City Post Office. This beautiful building is 128 years old, which you might not guess from the upkeep of it. It was completed in 1896, when Vietnam was still part of French Indochina. I'm not sure if it's a functional post office anymore. Inside, it's mostly a variety of different gift shops. But it was still marvelous to look at.
I'm just standing there, no facial expression whatsoever.
After perusing the post office and filling our bags with all sorts of keepsakes, the three of us stopped by this underground streetwear shop that had been recommended to me by a buddy back in the States. But the training and all the walking around had certainly taken its toll, so we were all ready to get back to the hotel and rest a bit before that night's session. And I, specifically, had a craving to satisfy. Midway through the week, I think the totality of the training, it's hitting, and sometimes you got to make choices. So I don't think I'm going to be going out to dinner tonight. I had a lot of fun with the food tour last night, but we did get back kind of late, and I did a lot of walking around today. So I think after tonight's jiu-jitsu class, I'm just going to come back and shell up in here. Watch some of my pictures. To be honest, I don't know if I'm gonna make it out of bed right now. Now we can do it. Oh, God. I didn't make it that far. Okay, I got up and I got dressed, which is, basically the whole thing. So let's get over there and do it to it. The title of this episode is Blue Belts, because of the two gentlemen that I rolled with this night. Patrick is stationed with the U.S. Air Force in Okinawa, Japan, where he's been training BJJ for 5 years. While I've been at my dojo for almost 10 years and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has always been part of our practice, it's largely been self-defense based until very recently. So my skills don't necessarily translate to rank in BJJ the same way they do in Jeet Kune Do. Probably describe my overall skill level as very high white, or maybe the lightest of blues, a powder blue, but not a true blue belt, and the difference becomes pretty clear. As with anything, it's a matter of reps, and true blue belts have way more mat hours than I do. This manifests in even the simplest of ways, like how they establish and maintain their grips, as well as how they transition between positions. Patrick is strong, but not necessarily stronger than I am. Everything he's doing, or most of it, is reliant on hours of technical practice and simply having been in these positions and using these techniques exponentially more than I have at this point in my martial journey. I wind up in his side control, where I end up a lot when I roll, and I raise my knee to block what I think is going to be a mount attempt. Perhaps recognizing that I'll defend that, he decides instead to leave his knee on my abdomen and start to dip it downward. Now, as a martial artist, you need to develop a certain comfort in discomfort, but this sucked, and you can tell by my face. As I adjusted to keep him from putting his knee back in place, he started to use his elbow for the same purpose. Just like in stand-up, jiu-jitsu is at its best when you can capitalize on your opponent's mistakes, and sometimes you can force those mistakes. I believe, in this case, it would have been ideal for me to try to scramble to my knees so that Patrick could wrap around to the back. I'm framing and pushing his head up enough to allow me to breathe, but not enough to really get the space I need to get out of this situation. In a bit of desperation for relief, I try to scoot out and use his head to pull myself up, but this just ends with me in a worse position than I was, and he gets what he wanted anyway, the back take. While I'm focused on trying to beat his legs and get my butt outside of his hip, he's already trapping my defending arm and getting ready to place it underneath his legs. This is a bad spot to be in, but he doesn't exactly attack it just yet. You can see him shake his head telling me not to tap, so I decide to fight back for a little more. We do practice RNC defense a lot at my gym. I think I said that in episode 1. But again, there are levels to it. My last ditch attempt here is to hike my hips forward to sort of put pressure on his neck from in front. Doesn't wind up being enough, and he gets the final tap. We re-engage, with me once again standing and him playing seated guard. I decided to sit down with him, and he capitalized by trapping my ankle, my opposite hip, and jumping forward, where he would staple my foot to the ground and start to collect both my legs in a sort of Dagestani-style double leg slide up situation. I don't know what they call this. Is there a name for this? My best bet probably would have been just violently shrimping to regard, but frankly, I was frozen and probably quite tired out from all the defense I've been playing. He secures himself in mount. Note how he starts to reach back and crawl his fingers forward under my elbow. We've practiced this in my gym. It's a good way to teach beginners Americana, but that's not what Patrick wants to do here. As I start blocking his bicep, he still reaches his hand back and reasserts this technique, and manages to get my elbow all the way up near my face. This is creating an uncomfortable stretch submission, which he then combines with his knee dig, and I just have to tap. Pat was very gracious and demure about the whole affair, but I definitely knew I'd been outclassed. I rolled with Arturo next. Y'all should remember him from episode 2. He is just as fast and athletic in grappling as he is in striking, and he has increased confidence because grappling is his preferred arena. If Pat was more the tortoise with his slower, grindier style of jiu-jitsu, Arturo was definitely the hare. He moved quickly between positions, never really giving me much time to establish a defense to one before he had left for the other. But in this case, he put his head a bit too far past my shoulder, giving me enough leverage and, with a little bit of strength, to roll him. Arturo has long, mobile legs, so he re-guarded pretty quickly, which then became another hassle, and I wasn't quite able to figure out how to pass that guard before he Uno reversed it and put me in mount. I hoist him forward so I can try to escape through the back door, but that allows him to hike higher onto my chest and establish this mounted triangle, which he latches into pretty quickly and gets a tap. Our second engagement was very wrestling heavy. I wanted to reach side control, but Arturo did an excellent job continuously spinning so that I couldn't get a superior angle. Another excellent sweep. He cross-traps my arm to try to get an armbar here. I refuse to let that happen. I sit up and immediately pull my arm back. At this point, I really would like to get to the back, so I spin around, and then I decide to sprawl down on him. Usually from here, I can control the arm and use it to spin around to the back. He sits out and gets me inside control. With my arm underneath here, I am blocking his hip from advancing, which is helpful. But, like a man possessed, he is committed to getting this armbar. I anticipate it and start defending, but he pulls a superior angle, and then it's my grip strength against his entire body, which is not usually a fair match. He gets the tap. The match ended shortly hereafter, so we sat and chatted for a bit. As with Aldo, I'd been spending a lot of time outside the gym with Arturo, and I'd seen the progression of his septic-looking toe. Will not be showing it because I respect my viewership, but it was gross. As promised to myself, I returned to my hotel room promptly following jiu-jitsu, showered, and spent the rest of the night on YouTube, before getting some well-deserved rest. Despite not having the same amount of highlights in my roles as I had accrued in striking, I was still feeling pretty solid about how training was going so far and was looking forward to the rest of the week. After all, there's an elephant in the room. I hadn't sparred Jeff Chan yet.